Okay. So, we will be going through essentially how to get started in fintech, and just I mean, we don't have like a number of slides. We have only like 4 or 5 slides, and we want to keep this session as interactive as possible. So that's why I didn't include many slides. So we'll have very high level introduction about iCreditWorks, and then we will explain what all roles, and then the interview, what all interview process, how the interview process is there in iCreditWorks. So this is our general agenda. First, about iCreditWorks, then in general we'll talk about fintech, our interview process, and some point of contacts for iCreditWorks. Okay. So Shankar, you want to explain? Take it over from here.
So our mission, from iCreditWorks perspective, is to look at technology as a catalyst and transform what's called a point of sale lending solutions. This specific industry has been in existence for 30, 40 years, but still people go through 1980s technology in signing papers, faxing it to them, a lot of this old style mechanism, and we wanted to take this opportunity to transform this industry. Everything that we do, our mission is to be fully digital. Our entire process do not involve any paperwork. We don't print papers. We don't send statements. We don't do anything. Everything that we do is 100% digital. And our mission is to just look at the emerging dynamics in the technology side and transform this space that's ready for transformation right now. Can you go to the next slide, Amol?
Yeah.
So when we look at today's world, right? So nobody waves a road and call for a yellow cab. People use Uber and Lyft and those type of technologies, which Uber kind of like democratized the transportation industry. And similarly, like when we look at real estate and hotel booking, like Airbnb, did the same on that industry. So we do the same thing when it comes to consumer lending, specifically, focusing on dental, medical, and home improvement areas to begin with. And it's about consumer lending. And what we do is it's a little different than the typical loans or lending products that were available. So what we do, an unsecured lending, where it's different from credit card or a mortgage or a car loan. Mortgage and car loans are secured lending where you have a collateral on the back end. And credit cards are revolving type products. It is a revolving credit, and you accumulate heavy interest rates as you start spending on those credit cards. We do standard installment loans, and it's completely unsecured, right? So, for example, we focus on the dental side. If you're looking to go to a dentist and want to do braces, I'm just using that as an example, right? And most of the insurance are not covered. How quickly, with few taps on your phone, get a loan, do your procedure, and pay us back in the terms that were agreed upon. That's kind of like at a 30,000 foot what we do. And how do we do that completely digital? And even if we need to get some document, you can scan and upload them. We can digitally read that and make a decision fairly quickly. Our entire process takes few minutes from start to finish than some of our competitors who does that in days. So that's kind of like our influence of technology. So technology is everywhere, right? So and we wanted to leverage technology in our space as well. Next slide. And please ask questions if there's anything that you have on your mind, right? So I talked this a little bit before, right? So today's challenger, right? So in most of the interactions, it is with a person in the office, whether it's a dental office or a home improvement, and there are a lot of friction in the financing process. The fear of declination is a big factor, right? So I wanted to apply for a loan. It embarrasses me that I'm declined for a loan when I'm interacting with an office, right? How do you avoid that, right? So our technology, you don't need to share anything to the office users. You do that in your palm, from start to finish, and get the full buying power. So that's kind of like our solution. But in most of the uh, current solution that's out in the market, it's very frictional. Um, Many oftentimes, the providers or the person who's introducing that finance, they kind of like become the arbiter of credit. So they introduce a product for financing, and it becomes their problem to find a financing products for the borrower, right? So there's a lot of burden put on the office users, and that's a big friction. So you take a dental industry, right? So a dental office, they're good at providing dental services. They're not a financial expert. They do not, they can navigate and get finance for a patient. So there are a lot of frictions in that, and our technology solution kind of like eliminates all of them by putting the power in the palms of the borrower, and with a few taps, he or she can get the money that is required for them to do the service.
Okay, so we just wanted to give you a brief background about what in general fintech means, right? And so that because we call ourselves as a fintech, which will basically revolutionize the lending piece, right? So in general, if you've seen any a big bank, right, they are very slow in adopting to the new technology, be it with mobile apps or any of those. So that's when fintech companies come into picture, and then they basically revolutionize that particular space, right? So some of the they obviously streamline the overall financial operations, and then they give a very good customer experience. Like some of the examples could be like if you look at Robinhood or even a Square app, right? They are very intuitive, right, compared to the traditional banking apps in general. And yeah, and fintechs typically help in driving innovation in financial space, particularly. And if you really look at it, the transaction speed with the major difference I feel is the way the transactions happen on a typical banking space and then in a typical fintech app, right? It's very instantaneous. In typical banking, yeah, there's still some paperwork, and I mean, I'm not saying that they have not evolved. They have evolved, but still, I feel in general the fintech space is quite instant, and the overall flow is also very innovative and very interactive as well. And some of the examples could be like Square, PayPal, Robinhood, and Coinbase, and iCreditWorks as well. We are basically right now into dental space, but we want to expand into other verticals as well, and that's what we have been working on as well. Any questions on this slide or anything? Okay.
Well, I have a question for the students. How many of you guys were familiar with FinTech prior to today's session? Yeah. Are you guys familiar with any apps? What are your go-to apps that you use at the moment?
What are the goals? Did anybody know about FinTech beforehand? Yeah. No. Some of it did, some of them didn't.
Okay. So for those that have apps or that you're familiar with for FinTech. Like, I think Cash App, there's Cash App too. I'm sure a lot of students use Cash App, right?
PayPal, Venmo, Zelle.
PayPal, Venmo, Zelle.
Yeah, that's
So what do you think is the most popular right now? I would say, to me, I would say Zelle, but I'm just curious what you like and don't like about them.
It's so like boxy. I feel like their interface could be a lot more smoother. If you look at Zelle, like it's always laggy and stuff like that. At least for me.
I think for
So, hold on, I can't hear you guys from that far away. So
Yeah,
so
we can.
saying that it's really laggy, like cells are always laggy and it should be boxy. Is it?
Like I don't know, the UI could be a lot better, like a Venmo's.
Yeah. I think there's advantages to Venmo and Zelle, but I think the one thing about Zelle, I think it needs to be a little like easier for it to use for people who've never kind of been in this space before. And I agree with him, it does lag a lot sometimes, so definitely needs to work on being smoother and more user friendly. Because I feel like at first when you start using Zelle, it's a little confusing, so it needs to get smoother for people who have no like technology knowledge.
Yeah, that's a good point. Considering me, when I first started using Zelle, I had no idea because I was so used to using Cash App. So that's a good point. A lot of these apps would need to be more user friendly.
Because not everyone has like the knowledge of tech and kind of what goes on in it, so it needs to be more like for everyone, inclusive.
Right. That's a good point. Thank you, guys.
Do you guys think Venmo is much better when it comes to a user experience compared to Zelle?
Yes.
100%.
Way easier, more direct.
Yeah, that's typically, if you look at it, Zelle is a product of big banks, right? Venmo is a fintech.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question. There's a security concern sometimes with some of the apps where you can pay the wrong person if they have the same name as someone else. And it would be great if there was more of a confirmation to say this person's not in your contacts, or you sure don't want to pay this, because I have heard students say that before, that they sent money to the wrong person because someone had the same name as someone else. And money back, and the person just took the money, and they didn't say, hey, by the way, you sent this to the wrong person. Does anybody have that happen or heard about that?
Yeah.
Heard about it.
That's common, right? So again, a little bit there's always a risk when it comes to technology, right? So security and risk is part of technology innovation, right? So some of it is on the user. So I've heard about it. I normally, for the first time, I probably transfer $1 or $2 to make sure the intended recipient gets it before I transfer large sum. So there are some best practices, but I think overall, the companies are doing better now. When you put in a mobile number or a Zelle ID or Venmo ID, it gives you the information back, right? There are occasions where all of that matches as well. It gives you the first name, last name. There is a potential that it could match, and you could transfer it. And once it leaves your bank, the money is gone. Very hard to recover back.
Mm-hmm.
I have a comment.
Okay.
I think in general, like I feel like that the situation where people send each other money by accident is kind of like not unavoidable, but like it's bound to happen no matter what. Like I have a pretty good example. The other day, it was my cousin's birthday, and my dad, who's works he's an engineer, but he knows how to use his phone, he uses his computer all day long. He's good with technology. He accidentally sent somebody the money that was for my cousin, and he couldn't get it back. Like, it's gone just like that. And like for somebody who's pretty good with technology, like it can still happen. So I feel like it's kind of an unavoidable thing. I feel like there should be like a couple more layers to it. I don't know. That's just my comment. It can happen to anybody. That's why I'm like chiming in. It happened to my dad literally the other day. So
yeah. So Zelle and Venmo, the real-time transactions are pretty much as like cash, right? You give cash to somebody else, chances of you getting that back is probably very minimal.
Right. And what I noticed about Venmo too is, I'm sure everyone has noticed, that when you get to see kind of what other people, your contacts, have been sending money to too. So I guess that's another level of privacy that I'm like, oh, I guess I'm just nosy to see who paid for what. But it's another layer too. You got to consider privacy and Venmo too. I mean, I think everyone noticed that, right? Or is it just me? You can see exactly what other people are paying for or sharing it too on Venmo.
I think Venmo should give an option because I know even when I use Venmo, I like can see exactly who's paying what. And I don't think that's always a good thing. So definitely, I think they need to get more like, oh, would you like to share your purchases or not? Because I don't think that's a good thing at all.
Right. Yes. I agree with that too. Yeah. All right. But our app is very protected, right, Shanker, when it comes to that aspect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. You guys have any other questions before we continue? Comments? No. Okay.
Okay. So I'll move on to the next slide, which is our. Okay, what happened here? Okay. So this slide covers like how do you get started in fintech, specifically how you can get into different roles at iCreditWorks, and in general this can be applied to any fintech as well, right? So if you really look at it, I'll start first with user experience. Okay, so there could be various platforms for building a user experience, right? In our case as well, we have basically an Apple device, basically, or iOS application, as well as an Android application. So you can start with either of these teams, and then we have a lot of web development as well. Like we have our external facing website, we have some of the provider portals and all that, which are built using standard frameworks like Angular and in some cases React as well, right? And then you could be an UX designer as well, which helps across all these streams basically. So they build experience for iOS, Android, as well as for web. Okay, so that could be the first bucket or the first group basically. And these apps are typically interacting with backend APIs, okay, or batch jobs. Basically, backend APIs or batch jobs, or in general, backend engineering is anything basically where you need data, right? And you need to push through transactions and all that. So all that is happened through this layer basically. And in our case, the backends are in Spring Boot. Some of it is in Python, and some of it is in Node as well. So we are very heavy in Java. We use Spring very heavily, and then we do use Kafka as a messaging service as well. So I heard was there any question? Okay.
Well, I have a question. So what for the students, what are you aspiring to be in the tech world? Do you guys have anything that you like to do or a hobby that you like to explore in terms of technology?
I want to be a data analyst, hopefully in the future. So I'm majoring in data science and minoring in business analytics. So I actually hope to work in fintech one day on the analytics side, because I'm also working with Python and R right now, and it's really interesting being able to problem solve with data sets and coming up with effective solutions. So yeah, that's definitely something I'm interested in.
Oh, that's awesome. We have a couple data scientists here, so that's great. Anyone else like to share?
I'm more into like the biotech field. So biology, and I minor in CS. So right now I have to do like Python and code R. So because that's what the labs use right now. That's another.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
that's
so
perfect.
yeah, so continuing on the stream which I had, right? Like, so we covered user experience, and then we covered backend, and then we have the database as well. Our primary database is probably MySQL. We use very little new NoSQL, but all our transactions and everything are maintained over here. So you can be a database administrator or any of those over here as well. Okay, so this is our primary stack. You have user experience, your backend, and your database, right? Now there are like a lot of these horizontal teams as well, right? So you have cloud engineering. So anything you do with DevOps, basically. When I say DevOps, you need to basically do Jenkins build and a lot of those activities, right? So those are done by our DevOps team, as well as cloud engineering as well. So our entire infrastructure is in AWS. So to manage those services basically and deploy those services, we heavily recruit cloud engineers as well. And site reliability engineering is in general is basically monitoring the system and basically looking at the alerts which are raised real time, and then probably notifying those alerts, as well as generally taking corrective actions as well. So this is like a horizontal team which supports all these stacks as well. Apart from that, we have a testing team basically, which does a lot of automated mobile testing. We do a lot of performance testing as well. We use JMeter very heavily to do our performance testing. And obviously, wherever the automation, we are not able to cover certain use cases with automated tests, basically we usually do manual testing as well. And then we have our own data science team as well. Basically, again, over there we have data analysts basically who are primarily responsible for creating reports, and data engineering is basically mostly pulling data from different sources and building our own data lake. And then data scientists are primarily responsible for getting insights from the data from which we have collated from different sources. And then obviously we have this whole information security layer to protect our data. So Shankar, you want to talk about that?
Sorry, I was just searching for the mic button. Yeah, so when it comes to information security, it's all about, we are fiscally responsible for privacy and security of consumer data. So we take it very seriously when it comes to information security. So it's all about protecting our clients' data as well as our employee and partner data. So when we talk about information security, there are several roles, in the information security area, right? So, starting off with an information security analyst who is responsible for looking at the data and analyzing the patterns and raising alerts. But even before that, the information security professionals is responsible for defining what is the InfoSec, program, the policies and procedure. So to be able to define for a company, things like, what is the access control policy? What is the, end user computing policy? And it's just not definition of a policy. How do you implement that? What are the tools that are required to implement the policies effectively? Then you have, you have a red team. Basically, they are, considered as a hacking team within the firm. So they try to break into our system. Their goal is, how secure we are. They constantly, do that day in, day out, right? How do you keep up with the marketplace and try to poke around and try to break our system? So before any real hackers does it. Then you have the operational role, like looking at the traffic, looking at the development life cycles, and understanding do we have all of the security checkpoints in place and things like that. So there's several roles within information security, but commonly people refer to as cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is just one aspect of the information security. The other thing is, the security lead is also responsible for, data protection, the encryption technologies. NIST defines a lot of these, patterns. How do you implement them? Where do you store the keys? Key management are all, critical component of information security. So various different roles in information security area.
Any questions on this specific side, or any questions on specific roles aligning to any of these blocks?
What's the largest team? The largest, like most employees?
What's the largest team do you guys have in your tech?
What was the question? What is the
What's the
largest?
largest team on our technology, on our tech team? Largely, was it data science, cloud engineering? What's the largest?
It's actually it's interesting. They're all equal,
Yeah.
right? So we have, if you look at the boxes here, they're all equally the same, pretty much the same.
Mhm. And there's so many layers that go into it, though. So, I mean, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask about anything.
Yeah, and overall, technology is the largest organization
Mhm.
in our company, right? I would say 60% of our employees are on the technology side.
Right.
But within technology, it's all these areas are equally distributed, I would say.
Right.
What does the back-end engineering team do on a day-to-day basis?
What is the backend engineering team does on a daily?
Yeah, I can answer that. Yeah, so we are, so I do that day to day, I mean, every day, so I can tell you what I do. So our responsibility is primarily building RESTful APIs, and these could be for any new feature. So once we build those APIs, we coordinate with the app teams how to consume those APIs. So that's our primary responsibility. And then those, some of those APIs could be related to basically generating a loan application, right? And then underwriting that whole loan, doing all kinds of fraud checks, basically. So all that is being handled by the backend engineering. It's basically we build our own APIs as well as we orchestrate to n number of sources as our external partners as well to get the API, to get the data from different sources as well. Like for fraud check, we go to like 4 to 5 different sources, collate the data, and then based on that we decide whether the applicant is fraudulent or not. Does that answer, or we need?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Was there another question?
And for the cloud engineering, the AWS certification, do you guys think that's like an advantage in most of the fields that you guys have working here, like the testing, data science?
Certification. So I'll say this, right? So, you might hear different answers when you talk to different set of people. In my experience, I always felt certification is important, but they're going to get you into the door, right? So if I get 2 resumes and both look the same and one has a certification, my preference, would to talk to the certification person first. Sometimes I like to stay away from these certification because some of these are like every technology has a certification program. You can be Microsoft certified, you can be AWS certified, Google certified. There's a lot of these certification. I kind of like look at them more than the certification aspect as a learning aspect to get into a new technology. They definitely have a lot of that introduce you to the technology, but certification is not like a must in the career to find a job, right? It will definitely get you in the door, and then after that it's basically your analytical skills and attitude and your technology capabilities that will get you the job.
I think in general, getting a certification, basically it helps you in learning that specific technology. That's my experience personally. I'm like, I myself, I'm like AWS certified solution architect, and I ensure that every year I give one certification. I've been doing it for last 15 to 16 years. So I feel it's a good, basically, it's a good learning experience to learn a specific technology.
So I have a question about what kind of department they have for information security and what kind of jobs or roles they have on the name of cybersecurity, and is there any specific certification they put pressure on or something like this? Basically, I need more information about their cybersecurity department.
Did you guys hear that? Or so the question was pretty much we want to know more about your cybersecurity department and like what application they need and all that titles.
Yeah, when it's so when it comes to cyber, so in our case, everything that we do is online, right? So you could say our entire information security program is a cybersecurity program. But so our entire team, is part of the cybersecurity department, right? So I want to categorize them into few buckets here. First and foremost, right? So defining policies and procedures, and constantly looking at the marketplace to keep them updated. That is a function. Okay. Second is how do we let somebody in our application, right? Like whether it's a user to a system interactions or system to a system interactions, right? Everything that we talk about authentication. What are different types of authentication mechanism? Username, password, a mutual authentication, OAuth, right? All that aspect, comes under that authentication authorization area. Okay. And that's kind of like typically a development type role, right? So there are a lot of identity and access management product. You would have probably heard some roles as identity specialist or identity and access management specialist. That falls in there. Next is around fraud analysis and fraud prevention, right? So there is fraud operations group. There is fraud analyst or fraud monitoring group. Okay, all this is about analyzing. Use a simple example. If I keep logging in, let's say from New Jersey, and all of a sudden we see a login come through California, right? How do I understand that pattern and put a dynamic rule in place to alert? It could be the same person. Maybe he's accessing through his company proxy. It could be a legitimate transaction, but it seems the pattern seems to differ from the usual. How do you identify that and alert them? So there are a lot of data analysts and AI machine learning technologies that play in this specific area. That comes in the typical transactional fraud monitoring space. So and then we talk about application security, right? Application security specialist. This is how APIs interact between them. It can be within the organization, or we leverage a lot of third party to provide us the data. So how do we interact with them? So that is one area. And then when it comes to data, how do you secure the data? Data security specialist, where the data goes from end user device all the way over the internet to a centralized data store. So how do we protect the data in transit? How do we protect the data at rest? How do we protect the data in use, right? Defining those is a key function. And when we talk about encryption, there's different types of algorithms that you can use in encryption. And how do you manage keys, right? So everything, if you really look at it, like to protect data, simple analogy is like, how do I lock my room or lock my house? So what type of keys do I use to protect? What type of locks do I use to protect, right? Key management is a key function. And then comes all of the monitoring aspect of it, right? Where it's information security monitoring, where you kind of look at what is happening in the network, what's happening in the containers, what's happening in the database level, and be able to monitor them end to end and see if there are any threats that is coming through the door. So that's more typically an information security operations function. So those are some of the functions. You also have we're not a bank. We're a lending organization. We have a bank that we work with. We're seeing as an extension of a bank. So all of this reporting needs to be in place. Definition of key performance indicators and measuring against those key performance indicator periodically is a key function as well. So those are some of the roles and functions in the information security area or cybersecurity area.
Yeah, but and what kind of certifications they usually focus on?
There are several types of certification. There are a lot of certification in this area. There is something called CISSP. There is PCI certification, PCI ASP certification. So depending on the area of interest, right, there are several certification that is in place.
So based on your guys' experience, how's the work balance just in FinTech in general? Like it's very famous for long hours and everything. So how do you balance family, vacations, and all that?
So work-life balance is a topic that's been there since 30, 40 years. It's not specific to FinTech. Even when I was working at Bank of America, I talk about work-life balance. It's absolutely up to the individual to do it. Like what is priority? You guys have to decide, right? And again, it varies, right? And it's all about planning, right? So don't overcome it. Like take time to do the analysis, do the right thing up front, so you don't have to work long hours at the end towards the end of the project. It's completely up to us, and definitely COVID has redefined some of the work-life balance conversation. Nisha, you want to add something?
Yes, I believe we definitely encourage work-life balance, and also are pretty big on mental health awareness too. When it comes to any role, you should definitely consider that too. You want to make sure you're it's great to be a hard worker, but also make sure that you're, like Shankar said, prioritizing what needs to be what's of importance to you. In terms of our company culture, we do a lot of functions in office too, to kind of step away from our desk. We'll have like a potluck. We acknowledge little national holidays in office. So we want to make sure that it's not always just work too. So work and play is important. Getting your work done is important, but mental health is important too. You got to take your breaks and get away from your desk. So, but any role, any company, regardless of FinTech, any role that you get into, you want to make sure, I know when you're first starting out and getting your foot in the door, you're working hard and making sure you're building up your resume, what have you, but you want to make sure it's the right fit for you and you're taking care of yourself and encouraging work-life balance, because, it can't just all be work and no play, I would say. But we acknowledge, if you go on our LinkedIn, I'm sure everyone's on LinkedIn. If you find our company on there, you'll see that we had a holiday party last year and we have another one coming up. We had a happy hour. So it's just that we want to acknowledge that. And, everyone works hard in especially our technology team, but breaks are needed. Okay, guys? But even when you're in school, even though with your classes, you should definitely feel encouraged to take care of your mental health and not just be all studies and no play. That's the perks of being in college too, and learning as much as you can, but you want to make sure you take care of your mental health. I mean, what are some ways now that you encourage you can practice that now, work-life balance? What are some ways now that you guys do that? Anybody else? Anybody want to let me know how you guys do that? It's kind of hard in college, but we can practice that now. Anyway, anyone want to chime in?
Sheriff, what you do? You guys go to the gym at all? Yeah, work out, exercise?
Like, speaking of gym, we have an on campus. We have a gym on our campus here too, where a lot of employees tend to go to. It's small, but it's fun to, like, after work, you want to de-stress, go to the gym. So yeah, we're big on that. Yeah.
Any fun clubs at school at all? Okay. Non-academic clubs?
What size? besides computer clubs? I'm sure you guys have hobbies. You can prioritize that too if you're into gaming or what have you. It's just, even when you're in school or even as you start your career in technology or what have you, you want to make sure that you really focus on that. Don't forget that. Don't leave that behind. Okay. All righty. Well, I guess we can move forward.
If our members wanted to contact you guys, could they have their emails, or can we share your emails with them?
Yep.
If they have any other questions and stuff that come up later on.
Yes, you can always reach out to us. Yeah, we could share our emails. I'm sure. Yeah, if you can share our information, that'd be great.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I have send an email to you guys.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay.
Should we move on to the next slide?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Yeah, so here we wanted to talk about in general, our interview process. So Shankar, you want to talk about it?
Yeah,
Okay.
so our interview process is very simple, and Aisha just chime in, right? So, typically, we have an initial session to kind of like assess, some of the soft skills and analytical skills, etc. And then we have another round of interview with the leads and a few other people based on the roles. So, it's just one or two. The first is typically over the phone, and then we ask them to come down to our office and assess them in various aspects, right? So, if it's a technology role, we assess them on the technology skills, their problem-solving skills, their communication and articulation skills. And we understand people out in college, they don't have the experience, so we don't look for experiences, but what we would look at is like, hey, have you leverage all the opportunity that you have within the school, right? So we want to talk about like anything that you did specific for a class, or did you do anything specific in the school, for how many hours, for how many years you were there. So it's pretty simple, not cumbersome at all. It's just
Right.
quick greet and hello, initial conversation, and then followed by an in-person process. And we also do support immigration if anybody requires visa sponsors after you graduate. That's one common question that we get. So we do support that immigration process as well. So it's pretty straightforward. So we keep it simple, no bureaucratic process or paperwork to fill.
Right. Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward process. It's usually an initial conversation with me, and then you'll come in person to meet our teammates here, and it's a better conversation in person too. So, because we like to put a face to the name, and it's nice to meet you guys in person. We'll walk you around the office, and so you guys can see how we are here. So it's a pretty straightforward process, guys.
I wanted to ask about internship opportunities at iCreditWorks. Like, is your internship interview process similar to like what you would do with a job, or how is the tech interview side of it, or could you give us a little information on that?
It's the same. It's definitely the same process. You still talk to initial conversation with me, and then you'll speak to like the manager of that department. It's the same process. What I love about our internship program here is that we treat the interns more like employees too. So you guys get a full experience here. Your interns, which is great, but we want to make sure that you're having a great experience and getting a great takeaway from it. You're learning as much as you can. Okay.
And I want to stress, whether it's an intern or a full-time opportunity, we truly believe in open door policy, right? Any one of us, there is no hierarchical, structure on our side. You could talk to the chairman and founder, to the CEO, to all of the C-suite employees. The door is always open, right? Whether we want to have a project level conversation, or you want to do some guidance and mentoring in your career. So that's one, cultural aspect that we try to keep up, and we do evaluate, for that as well.
Yes, exactly. Any other questions about the interview process? No? Okay. I think we can move forward, right, Amal?
Yeah, I
Yes.
think, yeah, Nisha, that this is your slide, so go ahead.
Oh, so if you guys have any, yes, if you guys ever have any questions, or if you see, we're on Handshake too. I know we have a few roles up there right now, and a lot of spring and summer opportunities for internships. If you have any questions, feel free to apply on Handshake, but you can always contact myself, since I'm the HR admin here, and I'm always happy to have a conversation if you guys have any questions. Okay. Oh, that's really all. I think that's really it, guys. You guys have any questions for us now? We love questions.
My question is, you guys have mentioned that you worked in both startups as well as kind of bigger companies like Bank of America. I think you mentioned Morgan Stanley. So how do you how do you feel the work culture difference in both these work settings?
I'll go first. So, it is different, right? So after working for a major corporation for about 20 years, I'll give you a simple example, right? Like when I was in Bank of America, for us to, release a product or a feature takes a lot of effort, right? So, even if it's a planned release, we had to go and explain why we are releasing in front of a change advisory board. We need to get their approval, take that approval, and do testing, etc. So, everybody's adopting to the agile culture, but technically, for us to release something, it takes weeks and months to release a product. But here, we don't have any bureaucratic process. It's like, a phone call away. Like, we can release anytime. Like, we have done releases midday. We've done changes end of the day, every day. In fact, we do releases almost on a daily basis. And we don't have advisory boards or committees to decide on certain things. It's like, cut to the chase. Everybody is empowered, right? So there is no a change manager who needs to approve it. So in Amol's area, if Amol says, hey, I've tested it, I'm confident we should promote this to prod, we promote it to prod. There's no better person who can decide on a change that Amol developed than himself. So that's one aspect. Second, the culture, right? So in a large organization, there are, even though majority of the large organization, I can tell you, like the CEO of Bank of America one time wanted to cut down layers from CEO to the last person. There were 16 managers in between, right? And he wanted to cut down 8, right? So even though you're trying to flatten the organization, there is a hierarchical bureaucracy in large organization. As I said here, everything is truly an open door policy. If I need to get some finance approved, I walk to my CFO's office and say, hey, listen, this is critical. I need to purchase this, and next 30 seconds I get a decision. In a bank process, you have a big budgeting process, review process, and allocation process. There's tons of processes that are built, and rightfully so. In a large organization, we need to be able to protect the area. So they are all built for a reason, but sometimes that gets overburdened.
Yeah, I agree to what, I'll just add on to what Shankar said. I think one advantage I felt in general is the learning. you get to learn a lot of things when you're working with a fintech startup, and you can actually work horizontally as well, right? So for example, like my work is over here, right, in this, but I can always chime in over here and work with this guy and take some pieces of it, or I can contribute to this as well, any of these. And if you feel that like in general you want to build expertise in any of these, you can, I mean, do across these different layers as well. So I feel in general the learning is like you get to learn things a lot if you're working especially with a startup, and you get a sense of ownership as well in general. So I think that's what I feel. I mean.
Mhm. And I also want to note that it's the same. It's the same as like our interns here. It's a learning experience for them, but also for our full-time employees. They are very knowledgeable what they do, but I feel like everyone's constantly learning here, and that's ideally what you should be doing. You should be learning. You should be growing, and whether it's an intern or it's a full-time employee role. But also for our intern programs, which is very exciting, I want to go back to that, is that for all of our interns, they join us, they are assigned projects during their intern experience here. And at the end of their internship, they do have to do a presentation in front of our executive team. And it's a great opportunity for all of the students to build on their presentation skills and public speaking, but also showcase their talent too. So that's something that we do here as well. Okay. Do you guys have any questions about our interns opportunities?
I mean, are we gonna get any links or anything?
Yes, so we're gonna be sharing the emails. They wanted if there is any direct links to the intern, or it will just be on the website and
What do you guys look for in an intern? Like in out of all the college students you guys interview, what stands out in a good intern?
That's a good question. Shankar,
I'll cover that. So, so the key thing we look for is the attitude, right? You're willing to work as a team, willing to contribute to the team, right? That's one key aspect. Second is how do you approach some of your problem solving skill or your analytical skills? I'll just use that, right? When you, whether it's an internship job or a full-time job, right? When you start them, you're going to be overwhelmed. Like the problems are going to be overwhelmed. How do you look at the problem and break it into smaller chunks to be able to solve that and provide value, right? So the key aspect is like technology and the language. You could learn anytime, and it's always changing, right? But how do you approach that? Your attitude towards work. Are you committed? Or do you take job really seriously? Those are some of the key aspects that we try to evaluate in the initial sessions.
Thank you.
so there's plenty of opportunities. If you guys go on Handshake, that's for spring and summer. If you guys want to take a look at that, and feel free to let me know if you guys have any questions. She'll be providing our emails as well. Any questions or advice, feel free to reach out to us. But if there's not any more questions, I think we're okay. Are we good here?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome, guys. I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday? Rest of your week. Okay. Have a good day, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.